My last few videos I've been doing deep dives into the history of Cyrodiil, specifically on the founding of the previous human empires and the ancient Aelids. A lot of interesting, strange, and supernatural lore happens in those stories, but I thought I would make a more grounded video this time, something more in line with the vibe of actually playing Oblivion. Many of the things you can do in Oblivion aren't world-defining. The NPCs of Oblivion live rather normal lives with day-to-day schedules. There's a lot of cottagecore aesthetic going on, which is why it feels so cozy to play Oblivion. Before the Oblivion Crisis, you could say that life in Cyrodiil, in the Third Era, 433, is quite idyllic. Everyone is their odd, baby-faced looking self with their hobbies, and everything seems fine. There's a lot of room for irreverence. One of the most irreverent things you can do is get a job because you need some cash. That's where the Fighters Guild comes in. In the Empire, as long as the price is right and the task isn't anything illegal, you can have the Fighters Guild do it for you. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap. This isn't Cyrodiil's best and brightest. This is a job, needs to get done, and you're the guy able to do it. The epitome of irreverence. Because you gotta get paid to get laid. So in this video, we'll get into the history of the Fighters Guild, as well as some of the hijinks you'll get up to while working for the Fighters Guild in Oblivion. Before diving into the lore and story of the Fighters Guild, it would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way to making more of these videos. Thank you. While most of what we do for the Fighters Guild is irreverent and silly, it does have an ancient history that goes all the way back to the Second Empire. The book History of the Fighters Guild gives you a quick rundown for the origins and the creation of the Fighters Guild. In the 283rd year of the Second Era, potent Viseredu She was faced with a disintegrating empire. The vassal kingdoms throughout Tamriel had reached a new height of rebellion, openly challenging his rule. They refused his taxes and led sorties against the imperial garrisons throughout the land. At the destruction of his fortress in Dawnstar, he gathered the imperial council in what would be called the Council of Barmont, after the town south of Dawnstar where they met. There, the Potentate declared universal martial law and imperial law. The princes of Tamriel would dissolve their armies or face his wrath. The next 37 years were perhaps the bloodiest in the history of Tamriel. In order to crush the last of the royal armies, Viseredu She had to sacrifice many of his best legions, as well as spend nearly every last piece of gold in the imperial treasury. But he accomplished the unthinkable. For the first time in history, there was but one army in the land, and it was his own. The problems that immediately surfaced were almost as staggering as the triumph itself. The Potentate had impoverished the land by his war, for the vanquished kingdoms had also spent the last of their gold in defense. Farmers and merchants alike had their livelihood ruined. Before, the princes of Tamriel would not pay his taxes. Now they could not. The only persons who benefited from the war were criminals, who preyed upon the ruins of the lawless land. Without fear of arrest now that all the local guards and militia were gone, it was a crisis the Akavir had seen coming long before he destroyed the last of his subjects' armies, but for which he had no solution. He could not allow his vassals their own armies again, but the land was deeper into the stew of anarchy than it had ever been before. His armies sought to fight the rise of crime, but a central authority was no threat against the local underworld. In the dawn of the year 320, a kinsman of Viseredu She, Denarius Ves the Iron, presented himself with a host of companions before the Potentate. It was he who suggested an order of mercantile warriors for hire, who could be hired by nobility in lieu of a standing army. The employment would be temporary, and a percentage of their fees would go to the Potentate's government, thus putting salve on the two of Viseredu She's greatest pains. Though it was then called the Simif, or I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, the Simif, or Sifim, after the Tessesi word soldiers, the organization that was to be known as the Fighters Guild had been born. So it seems that the Fighters Guild traces its origins back to the Akaviri the same way the Blades can trace their way back to the Akaviri. The Akaviri being the maybe snake men, maybe just humans with snake-themed culture who originally attempted to invade Tamriel from the continent of Akavir. Potentate Viseredu She is an Akaviri who took over the Second Empire from Remen III. Originally called Saffirm, if that's how you pronounce it, it was supposed to be only Akaviri, but with the population of the Akaviri being relatively small, they eventually began to allow non-Akaviri to join. The success of these first 3 outsiders to the Sifim opened the door for more local members. Before the year was through, Daenerys Vess had spread his business throughout the Empire. Young men and women, for a variety of reasons, because of desperate poverty, for love of action and adventure, in order to aid their crime-stricken neighbors, joined his new order en masse. They received training and were immediately put to work helping the aristocracy's problems, assuming the roles of guards and soldiers within their locality. The early success of the Sifim in combating crime and defeating local monsters so inspired Potentate Viserys Duché that he entertained representatives from other organizations interested in imperial sanction. Though formed much earlier, the Mages Guild had always been viewed with suspicion by the government. In the 321st year of the Second Era, the Potentate gave his approval to the Guilds Act, officially sanctioning the mages, together with the guilds of tinkerers, cobblers, prostitutes, scribes, architects, brewers, vintners, weavers, rat catchers, furriers, cooks, astrologers, healers, tailors, minstrels, barristers, and the Sifim. In the charter, they were no longer called the Sifim, however, bowing to the name it had become known as by the people, they were called the Fighters Guild. All the guilds, and those that followed by later sanctions throughout the Second and Third Eras, would be protected and encouraged by the Empire of Cyrodiil, recognizing their value to the people of Tamriel. All would be required to pay to expand their influence throughout the land. The Empire was strengthened by their presence, and the imperial coffers were filled once again. So it's good to know that there was a working union for prostitutes in Elder Scrolls. This shows that the world of Elder Scrolls isn't purely a feudal one, but also a world of early capitalism, where one can go into business for themselves. This helps place the fantasy time frame of Elder Scrolls to a late medieval to early Renaissance era, which goes with my theory that the current empire we see is based off of the Holy Roman Empire rather than the ancient Roman Empire. But I think we're done with enough of the highbrow story and lore analysis. Let's see what weird, irreverent things we get into when you just need to get a job done in Oblivion. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap. I think the main theme we'll be coming back to over and over again is that this will probably be the closest to having a normal job while playing Oblivion will be. So of course, as you get started, they make you do the grunt work, like clearing out rats out of a basement, but it actually turns out that you need to stop them from killing the rats by killing the mountain lions. There's still plenty of room for goofiness, like running into these 3 stooges as you keep watch for a shopkeeper. There's also room for you to be a little silly. You eventually need to bring some weapons to a group to kill a bunch of goblins in a mine. Each person has a weapon preference, but if you just want to be a little zany, you can just choose to give them the wrong weapon, which may end up killing them in the end, but hey, you're having fun on the job, right? And very quickly, you're given a supervisor position. Your job is now to pick up the slack of the regular members. Congratulations. You're like the assistant manager of a Chili's telling the other employees that they need to have their 25 pieces of flair. You are then instructed to check up on a guy named Maglier. Maglier basically doesn't want to do the job, so you basically have to do it for him. And you can either cover for Maglier or throw him under the bus. And I'm going to spoil it a little bit and just say that with this storyline, it doesn't matter what you do, because Maglier is always going to be a little shit to you. The funniest part, though, is he is a Bosmer, and later in the game, you and him are paired up to clear out a thieves' den full of just Bosmer. And I have to wonder if Maglier sees the irony here. I have to also say that it seems like Bosmer just being short in general seems to always be the butt of a joke a lot of the times in Oblivion, which is odd considering. Anyway, you'll do some other random bullshit, and again, Maglier is fucking up. You track him down, and the little shit has left the guild and is in the Blackwood Company. Your boss, Orin, makes it a priority that we need to stop the Blackwood Company.
That mission was the start of it. That was when Vitellus was killed. We were contracted by a wizard, Argoth, to recover an artifact from Blackheart. I went in there with 20 men. I left with 5. Vitellus wasn't one of them. He died covering our retreat. I snooped around. Apparently, they completed that contract for us. I went in there with 20 good men. I can't believe that bunch finished the job. There's more. Argoff, he's dead. The artifact gone. Sounds like a setup. Maybe they made a deal with Blackheart. I don't know. But I'll find out.
You run into another issue that happens at work, nepotism. The boss's son thought he was hot shit and gets themselves killed, which gets Orin kicked out of the guild and you demoted. Even though you get demoted, you're still given relatively important tasks of like retrieving the Stone of St. Alicia, which is a pretty, I would say, important historical and religious object. And then you also have a great quest of having to save Lord Rugdump's daughter. I personally love Lord Rugdump. He carries himself like royalty, but someone must have intentionally taught him incorrect English because he attempts to have a colorful vocabulary, but it's just wrong. Same with his daughter. And I just have to say that it's just such a funny little note in the game of just this guy who claims to be a lord, but he just can't talk right.
Ah, you are from the Fighters Guild, I resume. Good show. I am Lord Rugdump Groshurgak. Let us conversate on the Lady Rogbot. I fear that whilst out rock-picking, she was apprehensive. Stolen away. My suspicion is that ogres have abjected her. Please search to the east of my sprawling abode. They have been known to vacate these premises. I am most gracious and truly woeful.
After you do all those tasks, Orin finally reconnects with you about taking down the Blackwood Company. You kidnap a member to interrogate them, and while they do give up some info, they then kill themselves before giving it all away. So, with a little bit of information, but not all of it, Orin sends you undercover to see what makes the company so effective. You find out that it's that they've been giving their members hist sap, so they go into a murderous frenzy. You take the sap and mistake a past client as a gang of goblins. I feel like there's a parallel to get at here with getting drunk at a work party or something like that, but I'm not 100% sure. So the Blackwood Company is using a transplanted hist tree so they can have a supply of sap to enrage its warriors with. So of course Orin sends you to destroy the hist tree. You go and knock some heads together over the Blackwood Company. You destroy the machinery and thereby the hist tree so that the whole company is done and kaput. And as you leave the company headquarters, you run into Maglier again, the dumb little shit. And like I said before, no matter how you've treated him in the past, it doesn't matter, he's still going to want to kill you. So I was nice to him, you could be mean to him, it doesn't really matter, you're still going to have to kill him. And it's really funny, I have to think that this has to be some sort of short guy joke, because you just get done killing all the other members of the Blackwood Company, which are way harder than Maglier, and then all of a sudden the last thing is you have to kill Maglier, and he's not even nowhere near as hard. So it's just like, is that like a joke? Is the joke that he's just like a little shit that like isn't even really worth your time and you kill him anyway? I don't know fully what the joke is here, but I'm sure it has something to do with him being short or something like that. I have no idea. Can head back to Orin, and he's really appreciative of what you've done for him, and he gives you a family heirloom all the way from Morrowind.
It belonged to an ancestor, Orain Bearclaw, but was lost for centuries. It was found only when Malakath wrongly believed my family line ended. It was returned to me by a stranger from my homeland, Morrowind. Wear it proudly. Perhaps you can help restore the glory of my family's name.
And then my personal favorite of the gifts he gives you for completing the Fighters Guild questline is he gives you a wonderful painting of him interrogating the Argonian that you captured earlier. And I have to say, chef's kiss. Great work of art right there. Once again, I love that there's always gotta be a painting reference in Oblivion. You're now done with your normal ass job, as normal I guess as it can be in Oblivion. Thanks for watching my video on the history and the quest line for the Fighters Guild. It would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way to helping me make more of these videos. Thank you.